Welcome to the Big Biz Show. Taking care of business. You want fast-talking, hard-hitting discussions on business and finance? Maybe with a barroom slant and some really salty peanuts? We're not counting calories. We're counting cash. Before we get to the man with the financial plan, meet the money team. Costa, Mary, and Greg. Now, Captain Finance himself, Sully.
Well, live from the Watt 100 studios in sunny San Diego, California, Biz Show is on the air. And, of course, we have 3 of the 4 because apparently Mike a little too many onions and bacon bits.
Oh, it happens.
On the way to the store to buy himself some Imodium and a cork.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Great to see you guys today. So here's my question. Are you feeling the pressure already? You have to be, because you're 2 weeks away from Halloween.
What?
Is it feeling like holiday, like start panicky, like, oh my God, like we are right there?
I bought my first Christmas present yesterday.
Did you really?
For my niece, yeah. She wants a little stuffed animal, and it was on sale at Target. And
See,
I was like,
you're the
bam.
problem. You realize,
That's not the first
you
time
realize
I've
that,
heard
right?
Right.
The people who buy early are the reasons they put it out so early.
Hey,
so if we want to get the most out of
Black
Halloween.
Friday used to be the shopping day after Thanksgiving. And now it happens sometimes after, like February 15th, right? Day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Say hello to the Day Trader Trio today. Good to see you. Have you done any Christmas shopping, Trace Sojourn Hodgins?
Starting to, yeah.
Are you really? Yeah. James?
We got to think about it.
What?
None.
James.
Excellent, James.
Jeremy goes, none. Brian, are you a planner or header? No, me either. I find that, I remember when Amazon first came out and my kids were still young. That was a 15-minute process.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best.
Totally.
It was so great.
Well, in my Target app, the deal came up. I put with my groceries. I do the drive-up
get
Target.
deals.
You
You don't even go in?
no. Push the button.
So you do those little, so you got those little parking spots.
Yes. I'm the one that does that. It's the best.
Look who's here, Howie Font, our
Hey,
entrepreneur, is coming from New York. What's up, bud? Good to see you. Are you thinking about the holiday season yet?
I like to receive more than give, so I let people like Mary get. By the way, I have no problem. I think it's great that you get stuff out of the way.
You've given me some of the greatest. He gave me a great watch band with the band name on it that clipped on. It was embossed. It was fantastic.
Nice.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because people put together Christmas funds throughout the year. They put away, $10 a week or $20 a week or wherever. If you're a parent, you're putting away $1,000 a day for this stuff. But there's also emergency funds that I think we forget about. And Howie has got a little bit of information back because it's talked about in personal finance, but not discussed in practical terms for people who really need to use the advice. Howie, break it down for us. Outside of our Christmas fund and our vacation fund, what about the emergency fund?
Yeah, so I think we really, especially if you talk about finance a lot, you have maybe a missed opportunity because we always say, okay, what is the optimal? It's 3 to 6 months of expenses. Fine. I don't think anyone disputes that. But if you're saving and you're really budgeting, well, that might be really hard to achieve. So what are some guidelines you can use and what's something that's important? I think by thinking about this inversely and saying, what expenses do I really, really need? What can I cut? Can I create, some savings every month and I'll just slowly build up a pile? I think that's a better way to think.
How bad off are we? I heard a commercial yesterday. Danica Patrick, the ex-race car driver, was saying that if your car warranty is out and she was selling an extended warranty, that most Americans could not afford a $4,000 car emergency. How bad? But it's much worse than that, isn't it, Howie?
Well, almost half of Americans can't even afford a $400 emergency expense that they weren't expecting. That's pretty desperate. It means you need to be able to. That kind of clarifies why it's so important to build up this emergency fund.
Well, and it begs to ask the question: how in the hell do you build up an emergency fund for 3 to 6 months if you can't afford a $400 thing? We're going to get back to that in a second. That's where they leave you in the driveway thinking. Big Biz Show. Howie, stand by there. Now I got you thinking. Mary's not so sure she's going to come to work today. She's like, Greg's like, emergency fund?
I don't know what
surfboard
that
fund.
means. You know what that means. I don't.
Stand by. See you in a minute. Big Biz Show, BigBizShow.com. Thank you, everyone. Howie Font telling us about emergency funds and Christmas funds and why you can't afford it. So, Howie, here's my question for you. The question is, if you're living just above the poverty line, like many Americans are, and I don't know what the percentage of Americans are, how in the world can you put aside 3 to 6 months worth of expenses? Let's say raw expenses are, let's just say, a meager $2,000 a month to live on. Okay, how do you put away the extra money to get that $6,000, or as you even say, $12,000? If it's a 6 month thing, what's the trick there?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. To explain the poverty line thing, if you're double the poverty line, the line the federal government draws on who's rich and
how much?
poor,
If you're double the poverty line, how much are you making per year?
30 grand.
30 grand.
And
that's double the poverty line.
That's a third of the population.
That's $576.92 per week. So $576.92 per week is $30,000 a year. If you think, Rain Man.
I was like, that was. Did
I was trying to fact check that. Actually,
do some radio math. You'll find $576.92 weeks. Okay, so if you're making that $30,000 a year, okay, you're taking home. Well, it depends on your deductions, but you're probably $576.92. You're probably taking home $425 a week. Okay, that's $1,700 a month. Well, 425 times 52. You're taking home about $1,767 a month. So long story short is, how in the world are you going to find rent for, let's say, a quarter of your paycheck, which is roughly $500? And how does that work, Howie? Because it just seems like an uphill battle. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Not easily is the reason. And my point in bringing this up today is that, these people in these situations are who needs an emergency fund the most. So let's try and find a way to make it work. First of all, like I said, you have to watch expenses, and there's not a lot of room in that budget. You also can't let credit card debt build up. You can't go negative because that just reverses your momentum. So,
but Howie, not to interrupt you, let me bring up one thing though.
Please.
I argue that I could find $100 in almost everyone's budget, and I'm not talking about people that are living literally not eating. I'm talking about most Americans who think they can't afford things. I can find money, because what they don't do is the envelope system. And if you do the envelope system, you'll find out how much money you have left. If you create a real budget, and the real budget is, of course, your mortgage or your rent, car payment if you have one, utilities, and then let's go to haircuts, nail salon.
Netflix.
Let's go to Netflix. And the 17 accounts Greg and I have, because we seem to, right? I mean, if you go through with a fine tooth comb and find out your real budget, and then you say, okay, here's my grocery budget, okay? Here's my gas and electric budget. And you take that money, you take the amounts of those money and put it in an envelope every month, okay? So let's say you give yourself $20 a week for entertainment. I'm talking about a meager thing here. You put your $80 in an envelope, okay? If your grocery bill is $100 a week, you put that $400 into an envelope. If your SDG is this, you pay everything in cash. And the philosophy goes like this. When you go Christmas shopping, if you pay with a debit card, you will spend roughly 35% more money than if you use cash, because you just don't see it. If you're showing it. Now, the real way to do this in financial need analysis is you create two accounts. You create one account that says Mary's top line account, and then you have Mary's checking account. Paycheck goes to the top line account, and if you know what your budget is every month, you drop down to the bottom line, only what you need, and there's a little bit left over every month, because I guarantee most people can find, with their Red Bull's Slim Jim, stopping at the 7-Eleven, with their Starbucks, the latte factor, a little bit extra money. Now, I'm not reprimanding here, because I'm not suggesting everybody can do it, but if you really want to go through a painful exercise, go look at your bank statement with your debit card and your credit cards and figure out if you had no choice whatsoever but to cut the superlative or superficial expenses, how much money did you really have? And I bet you have an extra $100. Sure. I bet you have an extra $100.
Well, the Apple Pay doesn't help. The button, you know what I mean? That is actually changes the game, because I'm thinking cash.
Guys, I want to talk to the musicians.
I don't carry cash in my wallet.
I want to talk to the musicians, because musicians, when you guys are sidemen in bands in the past, you don't know when your next gig's coming. So when you have money, you put it in an account and you drop down your expenses. It's like running a business, right?
Right.
And you guys have learned that a long time ago, right? It's a natural thing for you guys. Yeah. Don't you think that more Americans could benefit from taking that sort of thought where I'm putting money in my business account and here's my personal account? Because let's say you're making X plus 10 one month and you're making X minus 10 the next month, but the same amount's dropping down. It evens itself out. And I think there's ways to do that. I think that Americans could benefit from that. Howie, if there's seasonality to your income, let's say you're a retail person and you get commissions and stuff like that, what's the answer there?
I think the answer there is the same as when you get a raise. I think you need to make sure that you have one minimum floor that you run your life on. And if a little bit extra comes because there's a seasonal bump, take advantage of that and put that away, but don't change your lifestyle. And conversely, if things go down, stop saving, forgive yourself, it's okay. And then Mary said two things I just want to follow up on. One, Netflix. It's the perfect example of, one of the marginal budget items that you were talking about, Sully, that are really going to kill you. And then two, the Apple Pay thing. Yeah, cash is way better for feeling it hit your budget. I mean, the friction, it's so easy just to tap the phone.
Would you suggest people, when people put money, and I always tell people like the Dave Ramsey method, and Dave and I have known each other for many years, and he has a thing called baby steps, and we had things called first things first, but basically what it was is that before you invest money, you pay off your credit cards all the way. You put away some money under the mattress, literally under the mattress in case a 9/11 happens again. You want to have actual cash. Then you want to put away 3 months expenses in a savings account, and then, and only then, start investing money. Now, let's say people are paying off credit card debt, but also need an emergency fund. Would you suggest a 50-50 split? If you want to pay, $50 a month off your credit cards, put 25 towards your credit cards, but 25 towards your emergency fund, or do you think you do the credit cards first and save the emergency fund for later because you can always depend on your credit cards again?
Well, you mentioned Dave Ramsey. He's got advice on this that I think is pretty sound. That $400 number bothers me a lot. I would save some small emergency fund first, and then I would attack the credit card debt, which is copying Dave. But I think it's sound advice because debt is reverse investing. It just kills you, and it pulls you back. So if
debt is reverse investing. That's smart to think about that.
Yeah.
That's so. For sure. So I used to do a show called 7 Questions. And the 7 questions, I used to interview celebrities, and I would say, what's your earliest memories of money and what was your first job? But one question I always said is, what did your parents teach you about money? What are you doing, Mary? Because my kids, listen, do you know why we started TikTok Money a couple years ago, which I'm not active in. We still have a million or so active views on that thing. Mm-hmm. We started TikTok Money because my girls, who were in their mid-20s, said, Dad, you tell the whole world about money, but you've never taught us about anything about money, and there's no financial literacy in school. Is there?
No.
Are they teaching people that right?
Unfortunately not. There used to be, but
yeah. So what do you do with your kids? Do you take the time to do it?
No, I try. That's it. Because I didn't have it very much, so I don't have a lot to impart to them. So we're all learning it. I feel
what I was taught was save all your money, which nobody's going to do. But save all your money.
And here's the day. Well, this is a question I wanted to ask for Howie. It's a very basic question of the savings part of it. Do you suggest getting a high yield savings account in your same where, if you're saving that $100 a month, let's say, to create that nest egg account, where do you put it? And to make sure you're not then drawing from it and it's growing.
Yeah, so I like the combination for a couple of reasons of a money market fund, for a combination of reasons. One, you have the higher interest rate. So if you put things in a savings account at your bank with your checking and your savings, that rate's not going to be competitive. If you go into a money market fund, your money's going to be just as safe, but you'll make a real rate of return, something close to.
But wait a second. Let's talk about rates of return. You can get 1% in a passbook savings account, and if you go online, maybe 1.2%. Why not just save it in cash and put it in the freezer, and put it in a baggie in the freezer, then put that baggie in another baggie and put water and freeze it? I mean, honestly, why do you? I mean, if you don't want access to it and you don't want to give it to somebody else,
you don't want it to grow a little bit.
What's one? You're not beating inflation. You're actually losing.
Not enough.
No. You're losing money.
Yeah. Okay.
If inflation, what is our real inflation rate? Our true inflation rate right now is probably close to 8%. It's what is it? Clocking at 4 or 5%. But if you put gas and food in, which is the only thing we really care about, clocks at 8%. If you're getting 1%, you're losing 7% anyway.
Well, and that's easier. You're going to lose some people. The second you say money market account, people are going to say, I don't know what that means, so I'm not doing it.
And sometimes you need more money than that. Howie?
Right, so pull it out.
Thanks for making us feel horrible. Appreciate it. See you tomorrow.
My job.
We may bring you back for this, but Howie. So here's what I want to ask you guys: is it too early to say, okay, Fuller, you got $1, put 50%, put 50.
Far too early. Yeah, he just doesn't understand.
Plus, he sees his dad go out there buying surfboards and tequila. Right. Like it's going to business.
It's,
Would you? I mean, have you ever thought about that though? Because I don't remember, and I've been in this business since my kids were little.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Never sat down and talked to him how to write a check.
I know. I need to, because they're starting to make money.
Yeah,
my kids are starting.
I have, and it makes me nervous
how
to get through to them, because if I'm going to be teaching them something, shouldn't I be teaching them the way they're going to use it? I don't think we're going to be writing checks in 5 years.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. There's a whole paradigm shift going on with your money.
Right.
It may be done for you.
Right.
It could be easier. Who knows? Big Biz Show. See you in a minute. Hey. Big Biz Show. Nationwide, coast to coast. Great to have you along today. Absent a Mike Costa. Mike Costa. He sends this message, he goes, I'm having a stomach issue. No, it wasn't the oysters. I love Greg's comment off the air. He knew exactly what he ate. He knew exactly what happened. Big Biz Show, great to have you along. Corey Perlman is one of our favorite guests. He's a social media keynote speaker. He's the owner of Impact Social Media, Inc. And of course, you can go to CoreyPerlman.com, ImpactSocialMedia.com. He's also a keynote speaker, and he joins us once again on the Big Biz Show. Good to see you, man. How are you?
I am excellent, Sully. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
What is, Mary, Greg, if I said to you UGC, you know what that means?
UGC.
Yeah, me neither. Mary, look at.
Oh,
what is it? What's UGC? What's
UGC? It mean?
User-generated content.
Corey, what is
right?
Well, I think you're right, because I'm looking at the notes here. Corey, what is user-generated content? What is that?
It is exactly that. It's when other people post about you instead of you posting about yourself.
Wait a minute. User-generated content. The user, not the star-generated content.
That's right.
No, like when people are using the Sullivan sound to their
we've got some places that are with 1,800,000 followers using our song "Oh California."
That would be considered user-generated content, right, Corey?
This is an important thing.
Correct.
Yeah, or people that take their pictures here when they're at a taping of the show and then they post it and they tag Lawful and Hater Studios. Then that's user-generated content, and we could reach out to them and say, hey, can we use your
Let's go back to Sullivan Music. Do I get paid for that? Am I getting any dough for that?
No.
Is there any cake for that?
Actually, potentially, because the growth on Spotify, right, Corey?
You get exposure, Sully, and unfortunately you can't take exposure to the bank, but you do get exposure.
Oh, you can. You just need to know how.
Yeah, take it.
So this is getting others to post about you. Is there any best practices about that?
Yeah, I would say make it as easy as possible. People are more motivated when they're unhappy than when they're happy. So when people are happy, you need to ask them, hey, would you mind posting about that on your socials? Tag us. We would love to see it, and we'll respond to it.
Go ahead.
Well, there was a time when people were putting their Instagram handle on everything and QR codes became a big thing, and I think they're still a big thing. Do you still promote that and say, hey, you should have QR codes where people can scan it and takes you right to the Instagram handle or right to their page where you can engage in that sort of way?
100%. QR codes became huge over the pandemic, and they haven't stopped. It makes it easy for you to be able to snap a picture on your phone and go right to their handle. And don't make it hard for them. Make it easy for them to be able to go and talk about your business. And keep in mind, it's more credible and a better testimonial when it comes on their page than when it comes from your own.
So this is like earned media for yourself, for example, like this television show. Like you don't pay to be on this show. You come on because you're valuable to us as content as a content provider for television and for radio. So this is earned media for you, but this is almost but on the social media side, it's earned exposure. And
correct. And Sully, a 2-second story for you real quick. The El Cortez Casino, I've been thinking about this recently. They are, casinos are known to not let people photo or videotape in their casinos. Well, El Cortez has turned that on its head and lets people go in and shoot their winnings and celebrate and all that in their casino, and they're kicking butt on it. So my takeaway from that is make it easy for people, allow people to come into your place of business, shoot photos and video, and let them do the marketing for you.
So, Corey, how does El Cortez do it? Do they ask people to post that content, or do they just simply allow it, and by allowing it, people post it?
They give them a free chip?
They just allow it. I mean, in the olden days, even like a few years ago, you took your phone out, you'd get banned from that casino.
Oh, that's right.
Big boss would come over and whack you.
Yeah. Wow. So now they just let you do it. They have fun with it. And now their casino customers are their best advocates, and they're growing because of it.
So, Corey, I guess to follow on Greg's question, do you just ask them? Like, for example, we have a live audience in here for another television show that we do every week, and there's probably anywhere from 20 to 40 people in here, along with the crew and the on-air and the band and everything else. Is it just a matter of going, hey, will you please post about us? Or is that too? Are we begging? Is that bad form, or what?
So I think it's all about timing. I think that if they're in the right mode, they're having a good time, they're kind of the pinnacle of their experience, that's the perfect time to ask. And then, as we said earlier, make it easy. Tell them to take a selfie with you guys and the band, tell them to post it. And then the last thing is use your hashtag, whatever that might be.
Corey, talking about that, I just flashed back to like the selfie spot days when people created selfie spots.
What's a selfie spot?
It was like a spot at maybe a hotel or maybe here. It's kind of like our 360.
Did they use a narcissistic?
Yeah, and narcissistic, exactly. And it was just like selfie spot, and then you'd post it. But do you think it's tacky to say, hey, post about us and then be entered to win? Are people still doing those kind of contests where you could win something or gamification of the sharing?
They are, because the bottom line is if you leave people to their own accord, they're not going to do it. We have the best intentions, but we're busy people. So if you incentivize me with a little thank you gift, a little bribery, doesn't hurt and motivates people to take action.
Hey, Corey Pullman is his name. He is a social media keynote speaker. You can go to CoreyPerlman.com, or you can go to his website, ImpactSocialMedia.com. You mentioned something at the beginning of the interview, that people are more motivated when they're unhappy than when they're happy. It goes sort of, people lament their losses 3 times more than they celebrate their gains. Look no further than the San Diego Padres, who lost to the Dodgers. We're still worried about that. Had they won, we would be way past it already and thinking of the next game. If people are more motivated when they're unhappy, it makes me think that maybe we try to give them a bad experience here or something like that and make them, like, what? How do you leverage that in the right direction, I guess is my question.
That's a question for another segment, Sully. I would say that real quickly, don't be defensive. Don't get in an argument online because people are just waiting to fire back at you. Try to fix the problem. You can turn a critic into a champion. So if you help the person, they can become your biggest advocate, and they'll turn their negative review into a positive one. And sometimes that's the best feedback you can get.
So here's a question on that, and I'm going to talk about Yelp. Okay.
Yep.
I don't have a habit of reviewing unless somebody really ticks me off.
You don't do it if it's great experience?
No.
Speaking of, that's kind of what you're talking about.
But
right?
the point is that because of the footprint I have in this town, if I put my name down, because all my accounts are under Sully, they're not under Robert Sullivan. I tend to try not to do that. Now, how do you feel about the Yelp reviewing versus, in a good way and a bad way? Is that slippery slope on the bad side? Because, somebody cuts off your finger when you're over at the nail salon. I'm assuming you should have something to say about it.
Yeah, Yelp can tend to look more negative because a lot of times you see more negativity on there than positivity. The one thing I'll tell business owners is people are savvy. So we can sniff out reviews that seem like maybe it was from your competitor, maybe it was just somebody you couldn't satisfy or whatever. As long as you are diplomatic and sincere with your response, the end user nowadays is real savvy to the people who are just trying to get a free meal.
Hey Corey, before I let you out of here, we never asked you what's your next gig? How do people get a hold of you and get involved, or what's your next speaking gig, and how come people come see you?
Actually, I'm going to be out in San Diego, first Utah, and then I'm coming out to San Diego near Thanksgiving. So I'm hoping to be able to get a seat on that chair over there.
You're getting here. We're taking it for the whole hour. Come on, man. We're getting all kinds of free advice.
I'm looking forward to it.
I got the questions already going, so.
We do no, seriously, we'll do a whole hour with you. We'll spend the entire day seeing, we'll be asking about a friend the entire time.
Yeah.
So, Corey, this music website, this television show website.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man. Corey Perlman, of course. CoreyPerlman.com. All right, much more Big Biz Show coming up. Stand by. Loft 100 Studios, the Big Biz Show, and our affiliates and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general.
Given the nature of the company's profile and the lack of an active trading market for the securities, investing is highly speculative and carries a certain high degree of risk.
We profile selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stocks if we are speaking about interviewing or covering a public company who has paid compensation.
Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by contacting producer@solientgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We encourage our investors to invest carefully and read the investor information available at the websites on the
Securities and Exchange Commission at sec.gov and or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at www.finra.org.
I like it.
Give me shelter. Big Biz Show. BigBizShow.com. Good to see you guys. Richard Stockton is president and CEO of Braemar Hotels and Resorts, BHR. Love this guy because this is the hotel luxury market. And this is a real estate investment trust focused on investing in luxury hotels and resorts. And Richard spent his career at Morgan Stanley in real estate investment banking. And he went from the associate, he was a cart pusher all the way up to the manager of the store.
Yep.
That would be my analogy.
The way to do it.
From Costco, you're a cart pusher.
Best.
Yeah.
He went from associate up to managing director, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
What's up, man? Good to see you, Richard.
How you doing? It was worse than that. I was the guy who had to make the presentation books.
Oh,
we had to print out and
brutal.
That was before they had PowerPoint, right? They didn't even have PowerPoint back then.
PowerPoint. We didn't have PowerPoint, so we had little page numbers we'd stick, and then we'd copy them.
You know, we've never talked about, because this is an infotainment show, but people emailed me last time, and we should have spent some time on drilling down to this thing. I know we defined real estate investment trust, but why don't we spend a little bit of time on that and why it's important to be criteria specific when you're looking at real estate investment trust, because you could be looking at hotels, you can be looking at commercial real estate, you can be looking at apartment buildings, and this happens to be something in the hotel space. Talk about that for just a second, Richard.
Yeah, sure. Real estate investment trusts were initially started in the late 60s as a means to give the average person the ability to invest in real estate because the lot sizes tended to be out of reach for many people. And over time, the laws, which originally provided tax exemption for these corporations, have evolved into a market that now specializes in certain types of real estate. So you can have lodging REITs, which is one that I run. You can have a REIT focused on apartments, one on offices, one on industrial, to give the investors the ability to express a view about a sector. Right? They can be very interested and very comfortable in multifamily. They could be a little wary of office, which is happening right now, or they want to own a piece of a luxury portfolio of hotels. And that's a very tangible investment for them, and that's what we offer with Braemar Hotels.
So, Richard, when you go into a deal, do you guys do the development as well, or do you come in post-development?
Yeah, typically REITs have limitations on the amount of development you can do. So There are very small amounts of our balance sheet we're able to allocate towards that. Historically, we haven't taken on a new ground-up hotel development, but we will, for instance, develop an existing hotel in terms of expanding, or in terms of, for instance, adding branded residential townhomes. So we're building these ski chalets at the Ritz-Carlton Lake Tahoe that will then sell to owners, and it's a ski in, ski out, 3,000 to 5,000 square foot condominium. So we'll do kind of add-on development, but we haven't really stepped into ground up just yet.
Hey, Richard,
we should go check that out.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we need to do some conduct some due diligence.
Let's go see what this
for the winter
ski
time
and
to make
ski out
sure.
looks like.
Hey, Richard, you obviously have a ton of experience in this area. What made you go in this area versus, let's say, commercial buildings or residential housing and so on and so forth? What made you go in this direction?
Yeah. Well, as a young buck, I got one of my first jobs working in a restaurant, and that was my initial exposure to the hospitality industry, and ultimately became a cook at a restaurant during high school and into college, and I attended the Cornell Hotel School. So I've always had this special place in my heart for hotels. I left Cornell when I graduated, and I went into real estate generally, and then got exposure to all different property types. But about 8 years ago, I got a call to ask if I wanted to interview for the job of a hotel lodging REIT, CEO. And there was some ways, going back to my roots.
Yeah.
And so I've always enjoyed the hotel industry. It's fun, it's exciting. As you say, the due diligence is interesting.
Yeah.
So you get to see a lot of fun places.
Let's talk about Braemar for a second, because you guys are intrinsically attached at the hip to decisions that are made in government, including interest rates, employment, how the economy is doing, and so on and so forth, especially in your specific category. Interest rates in the short term are reducing. I'm not sure what the long bond's doing, because that's what mortgage rates tie to. But how important is all that to you guys? Is that a big metric for you guys in making decisions?
Yeah, it's extremely important to us. We structured our balance sheet to be almost entirely floating rate debt. And the reason we did that is to try to mirror the activity of the hotel industry in good times and bad times. So we're a little bit different than other types of real estate investment, because we don't have long-term leases, right? Our leases tend to be 1 or 2 nights. So what we want to do is be able to be responsive to that with our balance sheet. So for instance, if there's a downturn and we see our top line eroding, we use floating rate debt, because that usually means the Fed will cut rates aggressively to offset that. And so we start to benefit when rates get cut. Conversely, when the economy is doing very well, and if it gets overheated, we're doing great from a top line perspective. The Fed will increase rates, but that's okay, because again, we are moving in parallel with those interest rate movements that reflect the economic cycle. In this environment, we've got much higher interest rates in an attempt to quell inflation. And we've seen inflation in our portfolio, which has been great. But it would be nice now that we're seeing a leveling off of our hotel revenue, that rates come down again. And we're very much looking forward to that.
So if you overlay everything you just said with your recent acquisitions of Four Seasons Scottsdale and the Ritz-Carlton Dorado Beach, what was the economic climate like when you started those transactions versus when you closed those transactions? Because it's a moving target, right?
Yeah, I like to say we like to zig when others are zagging.
Yeah.
And I think that was an example of that. In 2021 and then into 2022, we got aggressive on the acquisitions front. It was a period where interest rates were very high. But we saw potential in these particular assets, and there was a dearth of buyers, right? There weren't many other buyers to compete with. And a lot of the private equity firms were on the sidelines. They tend to use higher leverage, so they were very much impacted by the higher interest rates. We tend to use lower leverage so we can be aggressive. And so that's why we made our move. And we raised money in the non-traded preferred equity market at a 7.5% dividend rate. Mm-hmm. And then we used that to acquire assets that had an initial yield at or greater than that. And that was the case of the Four Seasons in Scottsdale and the Ritz-Carlton Reserve Dorado Beach.
Rich, you just demonstrated quantitative easing in a publicly traded company where, or something close to it, where you are taking advantage of those metrics. If I know if people want to get involved with you folks, it's easy. You can go to bhreit.com. But if there's people that just want to stay in your hotels, is there an easy link to go to, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, so our hotels are managed by a lot of the big brands, namely Marriott, Hyatt,
Four Seasons,
Hilton.
for example.
And so the best way to book is through those websites. You can see our portfolio at bhreit.com and then click through to their website for the actual booking process.
Last of all, I asked you this last time. How you feeling about the next, let's say, 15 months now, with the end of this year and fully 2025?
Look, I think all the forecasts for the industry are fairly lackluster top line growth. We might see a little bit of inflation. But what I'm excited about is, again, our cost of capital coming down as the Fed moves to cut rates. I don't see any sort of recession in the cards. And so it'll be a period where I think we'll start to flourish because, frankly, the supply of new hotels is dramatically down.
You got to keep coming back with us, man. It is fascinating. And when you come in studio at some point, when you come to San Diego.
Yep.
Thanks, pal.
I can do that. Yeah.
Let's talk to BHR. Is their stock symbol? Much more Big Biz coming up. Stand by. Loft 100 Studios, the Big Biz Show, and our affiliates and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general.
Given the nature of the company's profile and the lack of an active trading market for the securities, investing is highly speculative and carries a certain high degree of risk.
We profile selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stocks. If we are speaking about interviewing or covering a public company who has paid compensation.
Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by contacting producer at sullyentgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We encourage our investors to invest carefully and read the investor information available at the websites on the
Securities and Exchange Commission at sec.gov and or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at www.finra.org.
I like it.
Hey, is that a rescue plane? All right, Big Biz Show continues. Nationwide, coast to coast, 125 million TV homes strong at BizTV, American Life Network. Let's not forget American Forces Network in 175 countries and all the ships at sea, and of course Bloomberg El Financiero. Subtitles. So I remember this company called Immune Bio.
Yeah.
Ticker symbol IMBD. You introduced us to RJ Tessie last year because a shareholder had called us up and said, "Hey, you should take a look at this company." Right. It really is an interesting company because they've got this Alzheimer's focus, and since we met them, there's been 3 new drugs that have been approved for Alzheimer's disease, and they should have had a hero's welcome. And they have not, which is interesting. Immunebio.com is the website. RJ Tessie, we are so important. We get the CEO of the company here. RJ, good to see you again, man. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So why don't they roll the red carpet out for these drugs? You know, there's a disconnect in biotech right now. I remember in 22-23, biotech, biopharma had an interesting run to the downside. Of course, at the JP Morgan Chase conference beginning of the year, they said, okay, we're back. It's going to be tough to raise money the first quarter, but second quarter looked good, and all of a sudden third quarter came, and and the whole industry as a whole is sort of had the crickets going on. With you guys, it seems like you guys changed the world here and aren't getting the credit that you deserve. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it has been a very difficult time for biotech. As you know, the biotech indexes are down dramatically. Our stock is down dramatically, like everyone else's. The stock market is up, but it's mainly tech as it relates to things related to AI. If you have AI in your name, I think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
If you don't have AI in your name, you're a biotech and you're struggling. Now, having said that, it doesn't change what we're doing. It frustrates the heck out of us because we think we're doing really good things that are going to make a big difference in patients' lives. But Wall Street is saying, show us, right? So we kind of, we tuck in our tail and say, okay, we'll show you, and won't you be sorry when we show you how important these changes are.
Well, talk about the 3 drugs, because you've had 3 drugs approved for Alzheimer's disease. Talk about where you were last year, where you are this year, and where you're going.
Yeah, so we have one drug. It's called X-Pro for Alzheimer's disease. That's really what we're all about. What you said is we had 3 programs. But, when people look at us, and on one hand, they say immune bio, the other, they say Alzheimer's disease. So we're all about Alzheimer's disease. We are waiting for the results of a phase 2 trial. And what I mean by that, it's enrolled and, it's cooking a lot, and the patients are cooking, so to speak.
Yeah,
They are in the final processes of going through all the tests and everything. And while they're taking the drug, we expect to have those results in the middle of next year. And we think once people see the results, i.e. we say, we've shown you, then obviously our ability to take the next step, raise capital, do a phase 3 that really will change the world, will make a big difference. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask a question about immune bio and it targeting the neuroinflammation as a cause of Alzheimer's disease. And, can you talk a little bit about that? And I also have another question about how it affects the elderly population. So you tackle the first one first, and then I want to.
Yeah, the first one is, Alzheimer is really the word amyloid, and amyloid plaques is the word that often comes to people's mind. Because everyone with Alzheimer's disease has amyloid, and that's part of the diagnosis. But it's not a very good drug target, and we know that because the drugs haven't worked well. And what happens with neuroinflammation is this chronic low-grade grumbling neuroinflammation in the brain that happens as we get older. Age is the biggest cause of neuroinflammation, and you don't get Alzheimer's until you're 65 or older. But also, if you have things like diabetes, you smoke, you're obese, you have cardiovascular disease, they add fuel to the fire. So the debate has always been, what is the chicken and what is the egg? Mm-hmm. Is it neuroinflammation or is it amyloid? Now we know that the original sin of Alzheimer's disease is neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation causes amyloid plaques. Then you get this cycle of doom where more amyloid causes more neuroinflammation, causes more amyloid, and you end up with nerve cells that die. And once you start having nerve cells die, you get cognitive decline and you start really having the symptoms of Alzheimer's.
How early on can you detect that and can you treat it?
Good question. So it turns out we reach our peak at 35. In other words, our intellectual brain function peak is about 35. And then we're on this slow glide path to death, right?
Oh, man.
Now, fortunately, it's a slow glide path, right? But some people fall off the path and get worse. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, if you've got Alzheimer's disease, you have neuroinflammation, there's lots of reasons for you to kind of fall off that glide path. So the bottom line is it starts early. It really doesn't get bad until you're in your 60s. But if you have something that pushes you over the edge, in other words, something that adds on, boom, bad things happen.
Hey, RJ, we're short on time today, but we got to have you back. I mean, first of all, I recall last time you were with us, I kept on saying we got to get you in the studio and spend an hour with you. I'd love to talk about that because it's really an interesting concept here on how you guys are approaching this. It's novel, and of course you're getting there because you just completed enrollment of phase 2 blind randomized trial with patients, and I'd like to have you on as early as next week to talk about that specifically. His name's RJ Tesi, CEO, Immune Bio.